Estamos a 14 de noviembre de 2024. Hoy es el Lean Construction Forum y la primera edición de los premios COBA en España. Soy José Gil, estoy sentado con Lauri Koskela y esto es Podcast AEDIP, la voz del Project Management.
Podcast AEDIP, la voz del Project Management.
Welcome, Lauri. It's really an honor to have you here in.
Thank you very much.
In Podcast AEDIP. Well, I would like to start with a very simple question. Right? It's for those listeners that still don't know you. Can you tell us who you are and what's your relation with Lean Construction?
Okay, so I am Lauri Koskela. I have been professor at Solvos University, Huddersfield University, and now at Tallinn University of Technology. I am an accidental academic. I never intended to start an academic career. Just my employer sent me to Stanford in 1990 to study how the new production philosophy could be used in construction. And I found some like-minded people like Willem Ballard and Greg Howell, and we started to define and cultivate lean construction, and I'm still doing that. So my kind of first academic experiences have continued and carried me up to this day.
So, along with other colleagues, you started a whole new discipline in project and construction management. And you certainly have had a career as a researcher and practitioner. Well, where do we come from, and where do you think we're going?
In construction and in construction management, we are coming, and we are still largely in a period where people don't accept that waste exists. And all the methods and ideas of management were based on this assumption. However, there is much waste, and we should address waste reduction and elimination. And the Lean construction movement has in 30 years developed methods and tools, principles for construction, and now there's a rather comprehensive collection of Lean construction methods and tools, and they are increasingly being used. So the future is Lean construction.
Okay, you mentioned you had your keynote presentation today here at the Lean Construction Forum. You mentioned waste as the seven-headed dragon, and as one of the most important whys of why adopting Lean construction. Can you elaborate more on this concept of waste and also on the other four whys?
So the fundamental condition for Lean construction is the admittance of waste. Waste comes in many forms. There's a now old Spanish manual against waste from '62 at the company Ferrovial, and waste is described as a seven-headed dragon indeed there. So waste is any loss, all unnecessary, but to me waste is also value loss, value that we don't deliver even if we could deliver. It is a kind of failure to utilize creativity. It is a failure to utilize collaboration and so on. So the opportunities for waste reduction are limitless indeed.
And why do you think we look the other side?
There is just one word: economics. In economics, neoclassical economics started to be dominating in the 50s. It did not use the idea of waste. Taking waste on board would have been very difficult indeed. So economics chose to look into another direction, to ignore waste, or to claim that it's not important. And economics was positioned as something rational. So rational action is to follow the principles of economics, has been the thinking. And the basic idea is to do best possible decision whenever you needed to do a decision. Unfortunately, this waste side was not kind of followed, and actually in this process of optimizing, maximizing, and so on, in practice, people have been creating waste, but they haven't been able to see it.
But my question now would be like, but why in the end? Because economics actually tries to find the best way to maximize and optimize scarce resources. So why this denial of waste?
As I said, waste, it takes so many forms. It's almost impossible to predict waste. So taking waste on board in economics is difficult, and it was difficult, of course, in the 50s when neoclassical economics started to be synthesized. And actually there is another reason, namely engineering. There's engineering sciences which were based on the idea that engineering is about utilizing theories of natural science and nothing more. There has been a kind of failure to look what happens after a decision, after a design has been made. Also, that is, in engineering, waste is not interesting. It is just something that is exception, but the real interest is in finding the optimal solution.
Okay. You mentioned you have a strange hobby, if I understood correctly, yes, which is monitoring CO2 through the years. What does lean construction have to do with sustainability and circular construction and
very much, because The usual saying is that in lean construction we are eliminating waste and creating value. That is, value is what the client and customer want. And if we want sustainable products, if we want a sustainable world, so lean can be used for that purpose. When it comes to CO2, so indeed I'm very keen on that. And when I was teaching at Huddersfield, so I had a handheld CO2 monitor, and during a class I let people to check how the CO2 concentration inside the classroom is increasing. It was increasing to 700 parts per million. Uh-huh. And then I showed some results from research showing that when the concentration is 700 parts per million, so people start to lose their concentration, their cognitive abilities. And of course we know if there's a classroom with poor ventilation, so we are very tired after the class. But the thing is, when the CO2 concentration outside is increasing ever more, so rather soon we are in the position that this 700 parts per million is reached in general, and then we are dumping down. And of course the kind of more well-known reason is that climate change is happening because of this increased CO2, and now we see, for example, in Spain, bad consequences from this climate change. Still, CO2 is increasing annually in the atmosphere. It should not increase, and actually it should be decreased every year. And this is a great problem that should be discussed much more. And I think that in very near future consequences will be drawn, and there will be much more stringent requirements for building regarding CO2, but also regarding efficiency in general, because at the end of the day we must start extracting CO2 from the atmosphere, and we need very expensive machines and their maintenance, and for that reason, so in other parts of the economy we need more efficiency.
And how does lean support this objective?
Lean directly supports this, because lean is about increasing efficiency by elimination of waste, or by injecting more creativity, injecting collaboration, which is very good for efficiency.
In the last, let's say, 30-40 years, we've been witnessing how digitalization has been a consubstantial part of our lives, right? How does this digitalization wave blend with lean construction, and what are the synergies that we may find?
It blends very well. However, there is still tension. There are people who think that digitalization is the solution to the problems of construction. And of course, then there are people who think that lean is the solution. So they should be working together. And in research, it has been found that actually, for example, building information modeling is a great enabler of lean. And on the other hand, the lean context, discipline, collaboration, experimentation is very good for getting BIM into fullest use.
We're in the whole Europe, and I guess in most of developed countries happens very similar. We're also witnessing a scarcity of labor and a rising of industrialization in the construction or in the built environment. What's your opinion on this trend?
I think construction should be made interesting for young people, and I see two ways which we have been discussing. Namely, first, of course, young people are very interested in all things related to computers. So the more we are using computers and simulations and so on in construction, the more interesting it will be for young people. The other side is then this lean, which is making working in construction more interesting. Working in teams, working in a situation where creativity is required. So the work in a lean context is or should be much more interesting than in the old situation. And all this has just to be made visible to young people in school.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting point. What's your opinion on the education that we're providing nowadays regarding, in general, architecture schools or for construction managers? Where are we?
So we are in the start of a change process. I know that in many universities in construction management, lean tools are being taught, but not in, say, all European countries yet. Regarding architectural schools, there's kind of starting or initial interest towards lean, and I know, for example, the University of Huddersfield, where I have initiated a PhD study on the incorporation of lean into the architectural study. So something is happening, but much more should happen.
Mm-hmm. Can you give a piece of advice for a young professional that is starting its first steps, her first steps in the construction sector?
So I may be a bit biased, but to me it's worthwhile to learn about lean. It's worthwhile to try to have practical experiences on Lean, because there's a scarcity on young professionals who master Lean. So I have followed my students who have done Lean studies in construction management, and I have found that they have progressed on their career very well indeed. Mm-hmm. So it's good to have skills, abilities through which you can stand out, skills and abilities which older colleagues do not yet have.
Mm-hmm. And I understand you've also been a consultant yourself. Can you recall some success story on Lean implementation, something you're particularly proud of?
Actually, I haven't done much consultancy, but as a particular success story, I could pinpoint to my compatriot Professor Olli Seppänen at Aalto University, who formed collaborative project with some construction companies, maybe 5 years or so, and then they started to implement duct production in those companies, and thanks to this project now duct production is very common, and it's showing very good benefits in Finland.
And what would these benefits be from?
Shortening of duration, reduction of cost, continuous improvement that otherwise is difficult to get done in construction. It is more or less necessary in duct production. So I'm quite convinced that duct production is kind of the next future in construction management.
Okay. Lauri, I think we're reaching the end of the interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for joining us in this exciting day for Lean construction in Spain. And well, we would like to see you around.
Thank you.
Este episodio lo he diseñado, grabado y editado junto con Cristina Dunelowska. Yo soy José Gil y esto ha sido La Voz del Project Management. Gracias por escuchar.